Hi, I'm Dave Wierzal, and you're watching PHTV4 Spotlight. Today's Spotlight is on Mark Hamstra, the new superintendent at the Southwest Chicago Christian Schools. And congratulations.
Thank you.
You're returning to your roots here, I think,
am,
right?
yeah.
And maybe, why don't you talk about that background a little bit to start off, because I know you're an alumni of Chicago Christian, and a little bit about your path and how you got there.
Yeah, so I'm a Chicago Christian grad, graduated in 2001, and not just an alum, so my roots go pretty deep at Southwest Chicago Christian. So my grandmother went there, my wife's grandparents went there. I always tell the story, my other grandmother, when she graduated from college, her first teaching job after graduating from Wheaton College was at Chicago Christian High School to teach German, and was introduced to the basketball coach's brother, which ended up being my grandpa. So
Wow.
we have, our connections go back for generations to the school system. So it's really good to be back.
I would say that, I mean, there are generational connections there, but what a beautiful story too. You know, that family to be able to trace that like that. So you're back to, you know, your roots, let's say, but and you've been in education for a while, even though this is, you just started, I think you said July 1st, we were talking beforehand. What's your education background before this? Where were you at? What type of education career were you on?
So after graduating college, I commissioned as an officer in the Army. So I spent 6 years in the military, active duty, and it was an incredible experience for me as a person, as a leader, for my wife and I in our young marriage. And at some point in that journey, I felt sort of a pull to education, and I knew I wanted to continue to serve, and just felt like education was a place that I could do that. And so I landed at Chicago Bulls College Prep, which is a public charter school in the city of Chicago. We serve about 1,100 students from all across the city, and part of a larger network called the Noble Schools. So the Noble Schools have 18 campuses across the city of Chicago. A high-performing charter school network that was really formative for me. So I was there for 12 years and served in multiple capacities and finished my time as principal at Bulls Prep. Okay,
it sounds like a great experience to help prepare you for this. Thank you for your service.
You're welcome. Thank
Appreciate that. And you know, and I guess I'm kind of going back to that. I'm wondering, at what point, or did you always know, like, I'd like to get back into the Chicago Christian schools? You know, that was, when did that show up on your radar?
So I think I always had a sense that, you know, as a man of faith, who I sense that God may lead us back to this community and to this school, but didn't know the time and the role or the position. I think for me, when I left the military, I left with sort of a conviction or mission or passion, however you want to describe that, to continue to serve. And my sense is that education is key to a flourishing society. And so my hope has always been to just live out, you know, my personal mission, which is to build the next generation of leaders, and wherever that's at, right? And try to be faithful to whatever door opens in front of me, and God's leading in that. And so when this role opened up and the conversation started to happen, I just tried to be, just kind of take the next step, right? And if the door continued to open, to say, okay, this may be the right move for not only me, but for my family. So we have a ninth grader, so we were also we're in this process of choosing a high school for our son, right? So I got to look at Southwest and Chicago Christian through the lens of both potentially being the incoming superintendent, but also as a father, right?
And as a parent in the community.
Yeah. And that was fun. And that was, I think, really, for us as a family, and my wife and I, just a really good experience.
Is your son excited about starting school in the fall?
He is, yeah. So he told me a couple years ago, we were just talking about schools in the city of Chicago, and you know, he was visiting everywhere, and that's kind of how it is in the city. But he said, "Dad, I wish Chicago Christian was on the west side of Chicago." So I think he's always been pretty. He knows his mom and dad went here, and he's.
So right, you just moved to Palos Heights, so and I take it he likes being here, and he's close to school, and you know, great community. Yep. Well, welcome to Palos, and
thank you. It's good to be back home.
Sure. It sounds like a perfect fit based on the path you've been talking about. I kind of want to transition a little bit. So, specifically, when you take on this role, I'm assuming or guessing you have some goals in mind, some things that you would like to work on or see accomplished. Can you share those with us, you know, and how they fit into what you're doing or what you're working on?
Absolutely. So part of, I think, what's special about Southwest Chicago Christian is our history and you know, our legacy of really providing excellent educational experiences for kids and families for over 100 years. And so I'm stepping into a situation that is well established, that's stable. And so I plan to do a ton of listening and learning. Our faculty are really outstanding and committed. And so I think especially these first few months, I'm just having lots of conversations. Hey, tell me what's going on. I grew up in it, but it's also been 20 years, right? And so things have changed.
And it is a little different in the role you're in now, for sure.
It is. It's a completely different perspective. And so I think goal number one is to listen and learn and to just understand what the current context is, what's the current reality, and
probably hear their concerns in these conversations that you're talking about.
And hear what's good, what the challenges are, and try to get as much information and gather the facts. So, and then secondly, I hope to help really foster organizational clarity around our mission and what it means for right now. As I mentioned, we have this really great history, but we don't want to get stuck in that either. We want to move forward and be an incredible school that's available, right, and open to kids across the Southland, right? And I think to really just drive home, hey, who are we, what have we been, who do we want to be next, and get to a point of mission clarity that really drives the next phase of the school system.
It's an interesting, when you mentioned like the tradition, the 100-year, which I knew Chicago Christian existed in a previous location before I came to Palos Heights. So I knew it had been around for a while, but there is that balance between honoring your past and your history, celebrating the tradition of what Chicago Christian schools are, the Southwest schools are, and also, but we need to be part of where the world is going today and part of where education is going. I know, I'll admit my bias here as somebody who's coached at Chicago Christian. I think the environment is incredibly healthy and in all the best ways. I have no problem saying this is a great school system. Very different in the sense, how small it is and the Christian base, but the experience and the relationships and use your word, the mission of the school. It seems like an incredibly great and healthy environment. And so like you're saying, maybe listening is good because you got a lot of good things in place.
Yeah, a lot of good.
So acknowledging that, we know there's always challenges and curriculum's always being tweaked or revised or new initiatives are coming out of the state. What challenges do you see your school system facing now as you kind of step into this role? What are you aware of, at least at this point?
Yeah, well, I think the Southwest side, it's a pretty competitive marketplace for education.
Very, right. There's several private and Catholic schools in the area.
And they're strong, and there's a lot of Catholic schools in the area who have a similar heritage and history that we do, right? And they're good schools, and the public schools are strong. And I always see challenges as opportunities, and so I see that one as an opportunity. How can we all make each other better? And I want to be a part of that. Right? I want to be part of that community of educational leaders who's pushing excellence across all our schools. But it's a competitive marketplace, right? And it's a place where families have options and have choice. And so I think we just have to do a great job of making sure that families know who we are, right? The experience you just described, the experience I had at Chicago Christian was exceptional, right? And I want families across the Southwest side and Southland to know who we are, to make sure they consider us, right? And to make sure that we're always seeking to get better, right? And we're using other schools as resources. The other thing I would point to is there's the Illinois Tax Credit Scholarship is, I think, more broadly for education in Illinois, but for our school system specifically. It was not passed in the last budget, and so there's a veto session this fall. But that program is really important, and so I'm an advocate for families to have choice and to be empowered with choice. And that is a program that has been hugely successful to create educational opportunities, especially for low-income kids.
Right, it opens up more opportunities for other people.
Yeah, and I think that's a concern for a lot of educational leaders, especially across the state, and for us. And so I think it's a big moment in the fall to hopefully see that get passed in the veto session.
All right. Well, good luck, on that cause.
Yeah.
And you're right. You were in Chicago Christian is in a high school in this case, but your grade schools too are in very competitive areas. And in that choice, like you said, even though it's competitive, that should be part of making everybody better at that point. And I would imagine this, for me, this sell would be if you could get the people on the campus. I don't know how they couldn't be impressed with the feel, the environment, the facilities, the classes, the overall campus itself. Beautiful.
It is. Yeah, the grounds are beautiful. Our K-8s are, again, looking at it as a parent of this is the school system my kids are going to step into. They're good schools and great teachers, And then, like you mentioned, the facility here in Palos for Chicago Christian High School is beautiful. It's welcoming, right?
Yeah.
And it's a good place to be as a high schooler.
You have some tools to work with, right?
Absolutely.
All right. How about, are you ready for a lightning round here?
Let's go.
All right. For you, who was an inspiration for you to go into education?
So I was an athlete. So I think back on our coaches, and I had two coaches in particular. Coach Mike Lanier was the head football coach.
I
You
know.
remember Coach
Yeah,
Mike?
I sure do.
And I think we'd all still run through a wall for Coach Mike if he asked us to right now. So hugely influential. And Steve Bolt, who was my baseball coach, history teacher, was eventually principal at Chicago Christian. He's now the head of school at Wheaton Academy. Both have stayed mentors to me throughout these last few years in education. But I think it speaks to the power of athletics and the power of not just athletics, but the programs, the extracurricular programs. So when I first thought about education, there was also that passion to coach, and it was based on those experiences that I had.
Well, that's that holistic experience. Nobody is only a student. We're all more than that, right? Nobody's just an athlete. They're more than that. And you have those contacts. And the nice thing about Chicago Christian is that, the teachers and coaches, there's a good chance you're going to have your coach as a classroom experience somewhere also, right? Okay, how about question 2 here? When you were a student, maybe you mentioned this already, but who was your favorite teacher and what was the subject?
So I was a social studies, sort of history guy, and still do love that. So Mr. Weemhoff was someone who just made history come alive.
All
so
right.
I still remember him walking around the classroom. He would wear a tool belt with his staplers and rulers, and just would have a ton of fun with it, right? He'd go say, I'm going to work and we're teaching today, but had a way of engaging with kids in a way that was fun, could make current events come alive, and made the classroom just an exciting place to be for a 16-year-old.
I love that image, that metaphoric image of a tool belt. We're going to work, and but you said to make it exciting for kids, to make it come alive for kids, and that's how the magic happens in that learning process, right? And obviously, tremendous shout out, but a tremendous inspiration for you. I want you to think about: do you remember? Do you have a moment in your wherever, whether it was a student or as a teacher or administrator later on, just an incredibly impactful or memorable type of experience as part of the education process for you?
So two come to mind, and the first is we had an advisory program, and we have something similar at Chicago Christian, where as a teacher you have an advisory of students that you see from 9th through 12th grade, and you're connected with their family, and you're sort of their first touch point to the school. And I graduated that advisory in 2015, and I think the moment was it was 5 or 6 years later when they had graduated college, and one of them reached out to me to ask me to speak in his wedding, and to go back and to be that connected with the family. And I think it speaks to the power of that educators and the influence that we have the potential to have, right? And we have so many teachers, and I know you've worked in education as well, but it's those relationships. The second one was just graduating the class of 2023, and I think the pandemic was such a just crucible moment for education, right? In our country and in the world. But I think in education, it was to go through that experience with a group of kids from 9th grade to 12th grade, and then to get to that point at graduation was really special.
I've heard that over and over again, and it didn't really register with me until I was talking to somebody recently about this group of seniors. That was their educational experience. So the senior year was their most normal of the entire process. But and it's interesting, you mentioned it's the connections thing. Recently I was invited to a graduation party for somebody I coached in track last year. And it's that reminder of how important those relationships are and how you interact with young men or women that you're either teaching or coaching or working with in the hallway, whatever the context.
Those are the moments, for sure.
Those are the moments. How about this? The nice thing about education, I know for most teachers, administrators, and staff, I think it is kind of a year-round gig, because even in the summer, you're typically working on curriculum or lesson plan, or there's camps, or in your case, I'm sure you're very busy, but when you need to recharge, or if you get that vacation, where do you go to recharge, or how do you do that?
So my wife and I actually disagree on this.
So if we were doing a newlywed dating game thing, you guys would get X'd on this.
If we could go somewhere and sit on a beach and relax, and we'll do that sometimes. But I think I love to be on the move. I love to travel. I love history. I'm sort of a history nerd, so I'm that guy who wants to stop at every historical marker along the road and drives my kids crazy. But I do, national parks, presidential libraries, baseball parks. That's sort of, vacation where we're spending time together as a family, but on the move a little bit. I enjoy that. I enjoy those.
I think you and I are cut from the same cloth. I love history. I love visiting those things. I've been joking with my kids about someday I'm going to do a historical marker trip where just those little signs you see on the side of the road, I want to stop and read every one of them. How about this? So now you're the guy. You're the person. You've got new teachers coming in, whether at your grade schools or the high school. What advice would you give to a new teacher about starting out in their career in the Southwest Chicago Christian schools?
Hold high expectations for kids is where I always start. So my belief is always that kids want to be held accountable and they want to be pushed and they rise to the occasion, especially when the adults set the right temperature, right? And I think our job as educators is to set the temperatures. And as an educational leader, you got to set the temperature of the school. And as a teacher, especially, and I think a young teacher, we're always eager to build the relationships, and those things come in time, but you earn respect through expectations and making sure kids know that you're going to push them to be their best.
Good. And there's no substitution for that relationship and the expectations that come with it. So that's your first year teacher. How about, and I don't know if you guys do this at your graduation, if you'll speak to it, but let's pretend that you were at your graduation and you were, giving a speech to that graduating class. What would you say to those seniors stepping out into the world?
I think a lot about finding a mission or a cause or a purpose that's bigger than yourself. And it's something I find myself talking to our students about all the time. And in every graduation speech I've given, it comes back to live with mission, live with purpose, live with intentionality, and again, find a group, a community, a cause that's bigger than yourself.
I would admit, and that's got to be a rewarding way to live, right? A very fulfilling. There will come satisfaction in a life with purpose like that.
For sure.
To me, I left this question. I almost yanked it off. You didn't say no, so I feel like this is an incredibly unfair question. I'm going to throw it at you, Wendy. You got your dream job. You're superintendent of Southwest Chicago Christian Schools.
It is.
But if you couldn't be superintendent, what would the other dream job be?
I'd be a park ranger.
Really?
I love the national parks.
Okay.
I love being outside, and so I think I'd take a park ranger.
Do you have a park in mind?
So the one I haven't been to actually is big Teddy Roosevelt. So I just love to study presidential history. So to get out to the Teddy Roosevelt National Park, haven't been there, but I think that'd be a really cool place to spend some time.
Well, maybe that'll happen for you someday. Maybe part-time summer gig, or maybe that's a retirement thing for you.
That could be a good retirement.
All right, well, good luck. I hope you get to that second dream in there at some point. Okay, Mark Hamstra, thank you very much for coming in this morning. Wish you the best. I'm really excited for you and the Southwest Chicago Christian Schools. That's really cool.
Thank you. It's really good to be here.
Thank you. I'm Dave Wierzal, and you've been watching Spotlight. Today's Spotlight has been on Mark Hamstra, the new superintendent of the Southwest Chicago Christian Schools. Thank you for watching.